Hey guys, what's going on? This is Deadly. Welcome to another episode of Ask Deadly. This is the weekly show where I read your guys' questions that you leave me in the comment section. I take a look at the top comments and do my best to answer them. So let's get into it. First question this week is coming in from Smeagol. How do you think they can fix the grass not rendering at distance? Now, Smeagol, you weren't really specific with what kind of game you were talking about, but I think this applies to most games out there these days, is whenever you are like really close, you can see all the grass and the foliage, and when you're really far out there, nothing really renders for performance reasons. I personally don't know of any massive multiplayer worlds that have really nailed that. I know some single player games have, just because you don't have that additional performance and strain from being in a multiplayer environment, especially if it's persistent. So I don't think anyone has really created good technology to mimic that. Now, the guys at Scum who are developing a survival shooter, I've been watching a couple of their videos, and how they're going to do it is a little controversial. I don't really know how I feel about it, but it's very similar to the way Arma handles it. So in Arma, whenever you go prone in a bunch of foliage at distance, your character bleeds through the ground. So at distance, the foliage doesn't render, but you can basically be below the ground, or you will be invisible if that person is only going to be seeing that foliage at distance. They won't actually see you. A very similar thing is going to be implemented into Scum, where players will be basically invisible if they're laying amongst foliage, no matter what graphic settings the enemy player has. They won't be able to see you if you're actually in foliage cover. Only whenever you do slight adjustments in movement or change stances will the character actually move above the ground. Standalone, it works very similar, but it doesn't work all the time and it's really dodgy, so I can't really give you guys a proper guide on how to correctly maneuver around the foliage in DayZ Standalone, because it also takes into account different elevations, and some textures do it, some don't. It's really hit and miss, so it's not really something that's consistent, and therefore you don't see a whole lot of players manipulating that. But whenever you do see somebody who is streaming or in the world without wearing a backpack in DayZ Standalone, that's the reason why. They want to not have the backpack pop over the ground whenever they're in cover and exposing their location. They want to have that ability to potentially seep through the ground so they can be invisible at distance. Like I said, doesn't always work though. So how can somebody fix this problem? I'm not smart enough to answer that question. New technology is going to have to be created by some game development company to actually make that happen. And also make it look good and believable. So it's going to take a long time. I don't think we're actually there yet technology-wise to make that happen. Next question coming in from the Real Gamma Gamer. Hey Deli, what do you think about seasons being added to DayZ and being able to see changes on the map such as trees, grass, and water, and how seasons will affect your character? We know that now that the developers have the ability to quickly change the textures of the trees and the environment, because they were experimenting with that in 0.62. So that can happen. Many times the changes of the tree colors were happening, and who knows, maybe they could create some sort of system that can actually change the color of the trees based on like server restarts. So you can actually have like a fall, a summer, a spring, and a winter in Chernarus. That would be pretty cool. I don't think though we're ever going to see a complete retexture of Chernarus, unless it's going to be a modded version where somebody actually creates a snow Chernarus. But I doubt that that would actually be interlinked with other maps that are going to be multi-seasonal. I just don't think that's high up on the developers' priority list right now, since most of the game still needs to be done and implemented in. That's just something that would probably come down the road. But I'm open to visibly seeing snow falling. Like maybe the colors can change. Maybe the trees on the leaves can be a little bit more dead looking. Snow in the air. Seeing your player's breath a little bit more to actually tell that it is very cold out there. Having summer environments where you don't see your player's breath. Your character is physically hot. You need to wear like t-shirts and not wearing jackets or else you overheat. Things like that the devs can do right now. So I'd love to see that implemented. Do you think there'll be locks on base doors or walls that are difficult to break in? I don't know how they're actually going to be doing the lock system. I think a couple Ask Deli episodes ago, we had a whole discussion on this, the multiple locking system, potentially having extremely rare locks that have a longer degradation rate. So if you have a cheap lock, it stays locked on the door and unbreakable for like 24 hours. After that, somebody can use like a sledgehammer to break in or a lockpick. But there's certain time frames where that lock is working and will protect your little base for a limited amount of time unless you upkeep it or find a new lock. So we'll have to see, man. We don't really know that question right now, but hopefully they'll find a good balance, because I don't think any game out there has really nailed that either. This has been a lot of like, no one's done it right so far. So for the DayZ guys to do it, it's just going to be a shot, and we'll have to see how it actually functions when we get our hands on it. Hey Deadly, what do you think about sticks? Literally my only thing I hate about standalone. They are OP. They make fire axe, splitting axes useless against players. Well, fire axes and splitting axes are actually good melee weapons against players, but again, what you're saying is the sharpened stick has the ability to one-tap knock out another player. Same thing with items like a can of beans or a small stone, also a jerry can and a fire extinguisher. These items, whenever you hit somebody in the head, you will knock them unconscious for a little while. And basically in DayZ standalone, if you get knocked unconscious, you're technically dead or taken advantage of. So fire axes, splitting axes, pickaxes, and sledgehammers can also one-shot knock out players whenever you hit them in the head. The problem is actually hitting them because of the swing animation. The stick is a precision weapon, just like the can of beans and the stone. You have more control over it. It doesn't do as much damage as the splitting axe or the firing axe. Or sorry, the splitting axe and the fire axe. But I think, like I just said, like it's more important to knock out the opponent than to just do damage. I don't know if that's actually going to get better. From what we've seen for the 0.63 beta melee footage, there was a clip where a guy was using a can of beans versus somebody with a splitting axe, and guess what? The guy at the can of beans won the encounter. So I think there's going to need to be some adjustments made to the damage outputs of items like cans and rocks in comparison to splitting axes and firing axes. Because I do agree that there seems to be a weird problem with the DayZ melee. Obviously, if you have a stone in your hand and you punch somebody in the head with the stone and you crack them in the temple, it's going to do a fuck ton of damage. Like it could knock them out with a single hit. It could possibly even kill that person with a single hit. So I understand it's a little bit weird right now, but at the same time, if you get hit by a splitting axe, especially in the chest, you're not going to be walking around. You know, you're going to be down. So they need to find a balance there. One thing that, like, they could make melee weapons even more powerful against players, but that's a very dangerous thing. Like, for example, if somebody has a firing axe, why am I saying that? Firing axe, geez, the fire axe. If you have a fire axe and you hit somebody in the chest, I think that should knock them out or like put them on the ground and they should be wounded, like holding their wounds. You know, something along those lines. Make those melee weapons more powerful and have additional like effects against players where these precision weapons don't have. You don't have the ability to do that. Yeah, we'll have to see how it plays. What other weapons would you like to see in Escape from Tarkov? Well, right now we have the AKM that's going to be coming out in the next patch, whenever that's going to be. Nobody really knows when the patch or the wipe is. We also know that the Mosin will be eventually featured in the game down the road, and that's going to have massive impacts on the game, I think. Having access to cheaper bolt actions, because the 7.62x54R one taps PMCs like all the time, especially whenever they're wearing soft armor and kivers. So if you have a lot of cheap 7.62x54R weapons out there, you never know. Those might eventually get favored over the AKs and M4s because all you need to do is land a single shot on a vital area and they're going down. So we'll have to see, man. I'd like to see that. Some magnums introduced into the game. But yeah, I would say the Mosin is probably the #1 thing I'd like to see, just because I think it's going to shake up the game a lot. Do you think DayZ could implement hostile NPCs similar to Tarkov? Is this something you'd personally want to see? It's going to be interesting to see how DayZ integrates mods from Arma 2 and Arma 3, and that includes AI. So if you are able to include like random AI and PMCs from Arma 3 into DayZ standalone, then it's going to be totally possible for modders and admins on servers to introduce that. I personally, after playing so much Escape from Tarkov, yes, actually I would quite like that. I think it would be cool to have AIs around the map, but again, it's going to be untraditional DayZ. I would love to play a mod that has that on there. I don't think every single version of DayZ should have AIs with guns, but I've seen it work in Tarkov, and I think it works really well to keep that action going. You can have different types of PMCs and AI that are around the world, maybe different types of characters with their own little stories, hostile, friendly, survivors, to make the world a little bit more believable. So it would be interesting to see who makes that mod and if it's even possible to do so. Are you ever going to play PUBG soon again? Well, actually, I've been playing it again over the last couple weeks. I usually try to play it at least once a week. I haven't had anything really awesome to share with you guys video-wise, so I don't expect anything like that anytime soon. But I'm going to be making a separate video to talk about my new stream team, the Marksmen, with Marks from TV, Monster Deface, and P-Bro. That's going to be coming very soon, so I'll give you guys more information on that. And when I'm playing games with those guys, they're very much into BR shooters like Fortnite and PUBG. So I'm going to be playing a lot more of those guys, so I'll probably be playing a lot more pub. I'm still a PUBG partner, and I like to remain a PUBG partner for now and into the future. And I have to meet certain content requirements in order to do so, like 3 streams a month, which I am already meeting. So expect like 1 night a week that I'll be playing that game, usually on Wednesdays. Other than that, I'll be sticking to Tarkov and DayZ primarily. Well, guys, that's it for this week's episode of Ask Deadly. If you guys want to get an opportunity to get your questions answered in next week's video, then write them in the comment section below. Upvote similar comments so you have a higher chance of your question being answered. And also be sure to check out the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/DeadlySlob. I stream every single morning starting at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and Sundays at noon. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.